and it's a pleasure for me to welcome Zoe Molelekwa, jazz musician, into the studio. Welcome, Zoe. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
We need to get you a microphone there. And I see the piano is... whose piano is that? Is it inheritance there or what?
No. This belongs to a friend of mine who's generous enough to lend me his instrument for this interview performance.
Tell me, what's it with Molelekwas and pianos? Is it the genes and spirits?
Oh, it is. I mean, it goes back 5 generations.
Yeah.
To the days of Marabi. So
5 generations.
My great grandfather was the first Marabi pianist. And
wow.
It kind of went down the lineage.
You're the son of Moses and Flo Molelekwa.
Yes, that is correct.
Your mom also had a lot of creative in her
She
and
did.
in her family tree.
Yes, her father was also a pianist
Yeah.
and actor, the late great James Mtoba. And she was a musician herself, but I believe when she met my father, she decided...
You can't beat that, join it.
Yeah.
Moses Molelekwa, what an incredible musician. And I had the good fortune of spending quite a bit of time with your dad, including an appearance at the North Sea Jazz Festival. I think it was 1999.
At The Hague.
It was in The Hague, indeed. It was on a stage called the Dak Terras stage.
Right.
And it was a Made in South Africa stage where, for the very first time, the world got to see what South African jazz was all about. And it blew me away, your dad's performance. There was a 10-minute standing ovation. Jaws was on bass, Cello was on drums, and I know it was Sankamota.
It was Mukoni Sinkhane on trombone.
There we
and
go.
The late Moses Khumalo on alto saxophone.
That is, yeah. It was an absolutely amazing performance, and I don't think the Europeans, predominantly present, could believe what was happening in this particular country. You're saying it's flowing in that genes and spirits over very many decades, many generations into your dad and into you. But you couldn't have had like this big relationship with your dad because he passed on and you were young.
Sure. I mean, I was fortunate enough to spend probably my most important 6 years of my life with my parents, the first 6 years of my life. And after that, I was raised by my maternal uncle and aunt. And I wasn't necessarily so active in music for those years until about the age of 18 when I finished school and I made the decision that I wanted to be a musician and sought out the mentorship of Mkhulu Themba Mkhize and then studied with Africa Mkhize and started meeting a mentor who is still a very big part of my life, Dr. Nduduzo Makhathini. So it's been a very interesting journey. It's something that I've always known I've wanted to do. But I think my upbringing played a very big role in solidifying the importance of having a strong conviction and wanting to work hard towards pursuing my dream.
There must have been a lot of music in the home in that first 6 years of your life.
Definitely. I mean, I used to follow my father around to almost every rehearsal, as many performances as I could. Just yesterday I met an old friend who remembered the times when I would also fall asleep at the bar in Baseline on 7th Street, drinking grape tizers and at Kippis. So it was a very, very enriching time for me. I think, if anything, that time really set the precedent for the rest of my life.
Yeah. There was an article that I read. I think you mentioned that you don't really play your dad's music.
Not that I don't really play my dad's music. I think one thing I'm very appreciative of that my grandfather would always remind me is that I am my own person. And so I think growing up under the shadow of my father, there's that expectation of, is he going to be like Moses? And I think my reason for not necessarily playing his music is because I don't want to fall into the trap of trying to emulate him and trying to be him, but rather respect his music from a point of also knowing that I'm a composer and that I have my own path to forge. And so I think my focus has really just been on that. And obviously I do play my father's music from time to time, but I don't want to be known for being Moses' son that plays his father's music. I want to be known as Zoe Molelekwa, who is Moses' son, has a career of his own, and pays tributes to his father from time to time.
Why did you just drop the drums like that?
Well, to be honest, the reason why I played the drums, I started playing the drums at the age of 3. So the story is, I had a piano lesson with my father. And obviously being so young and so energetic, I don't think I had the focus to just learn what it was he was teaching me. So I got very frustrated and started banging the piano. And then he taught me some rhythmic songs on the piano, but what I was really inclined to was the drums, because every time he would rehearse with Silo Muntwedi or Pushu Lebeshe, I would always be there, just so... I don't even know how to explain it.
So the drums made more sense to a 3-year-old than the piano?
They did.
I can understand
They did. I mean, it seemed like you had so much freedom to just, express yourself as willingly as you wanted to. So I would take the drumsticks and start banging on the drums while they were rehearsing. So they got me a mini drum kit. And so that's where I think my passion for music and actually engaging in it really started. And then obviously growing up and really becoming older and more mature, then I started gravitating more towards the piano.
Yeah. I want you to tell us about the band, because I think the band playing with you is an indication of where you are at as well.
I think so. It's really one unit I'm so proud of being able to play with, because they are all musicians I've admired for so long. Bonolo Nkwane on drums, who I've played with since I first toured Cape Town in 2019. I'll be having Benjamin Jefter on bass, who is a big brother who's done such great things on the scene and overseas as well, who I've always wanted to play with, and so it's really a privilege to have him in my band this time around. And Simon Manana on alto saxophone, who is a very dear brother and just an amazing musician, who I'm also based with in New York.
Okay.
And I've been playing with him for quite a number of years now, so it's really a strong unit, and we're looking forward to giving a great performance at Jazz and Vines.
You were saying New York. Tell us about New York.
So how New York came into the picture is in 2019, while I was still a student at the UKZN, I learned of a scholarship opportunity for 6 promising young musicians to go and further their studies at the Manhattan School of Music through the Hugh Masekela Heritage Scholarship in conjunction with Alma Philanthropies. And I hadn't known about the scholarship as yet until I reached out to a professor at the Manhattan School of Music by the name of Elio Villafranca, a great Cuban Grammy award-winning pianist, whose work I had always been fond of. And, fortunately we fostered a relationship, and he kind of took on some sort of a mentorship role. I'd send him recordings back and forth. He'd give me advice, not knowing that he had actually shared our correspondence with the then director of the jazz department, Stefan Harris, and Michelle Wright. And they sent me an email telling me that, they've heard my work and they think it's really amazing and they would love to have me at the Manhattan School of Music, and that there had just been a scholarship for South African students that had just been established, and they encouraged me to apply. And so I applied. I submitted all my essays and audition recordings, and learned of my acceptance in 2020 in April, just after the lockdown had started.
Wow. And
I moved to New York at the height of the pandemic in 2020, and I've been a student at the Manhattan School of Music since then.
And you're gigging around there, and I'm just wondering to what extent you're encountering what I encountered when your dad was playing at the North Sea Jazz Festival, that Europeans who are maybe not familiar with the sound, saying this is really, really powerful. And I think your dad just kind of represented a new generation taking the baton. And I know that there's a lot of action going down in New York. Young South Africans are playing there alongside you too. How are they finding our music?
Oh, I think it's definitely a similar sense. There's definitely been more of an interest in in our work and in our culture and our sound. Obviously, with so many South African musicians now being seen in the world stages even more, and we've also been performing quite a bit around the US. We, as the Hugh Masekela Heritage Scholars, also established a series of concerts in honor of South African composers. And just judging from that, I mean, we performed at the Lincoln Center. We went on to be invited at the Gen Conference in Florida, and many, many more concerts coming up.
We're going to have to wrap it. We've got to go to news in Joburg at 12 o'clock. So,
Sure.
so we've got to be meticulous. Thank you very much for joining us, Zoe. Really good to see you.